compound interest. Continuous compound interest. All right? Now, when I first introduced E last Friday, we did a demonstration of $1 at 100% interest, and we kept compounding it more and more often, and the rate of return kept getting closer and closer to E. Remember the exercise. It was $1 at 100% interest, simple interest. I give you $1, I'm telling you I'm charging 100% interest in 1 year. How much do you owe me? Give me $1, it's 100% interest.
$2.
At the end of the year, you have to give me $2. Okay? That's the deal with that. Then we started compounding it, and the most we got to was 2.71. And if we kept going and really rounded carefully, we would have gotten 2.71828. That's E. Because of that, that led with a little more work that I won't duplicate to a special formula. And it describes continuous compound interest. Now, continuous compound interest is a great deal if you can get it on a savings account of some kind. It would be a lousy deal on a loan. But continuously compounded interest is the interest is literally being determined every single possible second of the day, and you're getting an almost infinitely small chunk of the interest. And the formula describes that is the amount you have in the bank at any time will be the principal being how much you started with, times E raised to the interest rate times the number of years you leave it in the account. And this formula gets a nickname because when you write this with abbreviations, the amount equals the principal times E to the RT, and what does it look like that spells?
PERT.
Well, just the PERT part usually, so let's discuss. So A equals PE to the RT, or A equals PERT, is continuous compound interest. This is also a great deal for math students because PERT is easier to remember and easier to manipulate than any other sort of interest formula except for simple interest. Because you've got an E button on your calculator, and this is fairly easy to remember. Regular compound interest, which we've been doing by comparison. Okay, now this is when I just write compound interest. What I'm talking about is it's compounded monthly, it's compounded daily, it's compounded weekly, it's compounded quarterly, still hourly even. There's some number. If we go down to compounded hourly, it will be a large number. But there's some number that you have to plug in. We're going to use N. So compound interest N times looks like this. The amount equals the principal. Now in this case, instead of being multiplied times E, this is multiplied times 1.
Which number is the principal?
Principal is the amount you start with.
Oh, okay.
So you imagine the initial amount you invest. 1 plus the rate, okay, as a decimal, not as a percentage, divided by the number of times you're compounding in a year, raised to N, the number of times you're compounding, times the number of years.
Well, then where's E?
Well, if you're compounding it a finite number of times, E doesn't actually show up. E didn't show up on last Friday until we didn't get close to E until we were compounding it hourly, which we figured out was like over 8,000 times a year. Okay? And E doesn't actually show up in all of its glory until you're compounding it continuously, which is a really weird idea. Because it's like you're compounding it every possible instant of the day, not even every second, smaller than that. You're actually compounding it an infinite number of times and giving an almost infinitely small amount of interest during that.
Banks don't do this, right?
Pardon?
Banks don't do this, right?
Yeah, they do sometimes.
Do continuous compound interest, they do that like every millisecond?
Well, they don't figure it every millisecond. What they do is they just use E.
Oh.
Luckily, some very clever mathematicians figured out that this behavior is predictable and that E will always fill in for it. So they don't have to actually go every millisecond.
Why do banks do this?
So you make money.
Um,
And then, yeah, like, how do you, like, the old banks have compound and simple interest?
yeah.
And you can, why wouldn't you just not always do compound interest? Since you make more money off of it.
Well, remember, all of this benefits whether this benefits the consumer or the bank depends on whether you're talking about a savings account or a loan.
And would you have to pay more money to do compound interest than you do for simple interest?
Well, sometimes what they'll do is, like, if you're looking for compound interest on a savings account, okay, sometimes what they'll do is have a minimum amount of money that they want you to invest. Like, if I go in there with $100, they're going to be like, we'll give you 2% simple interest yearly. If I go in there with $100,000, they might say, hey, we have this money market account, which is a special account, and as long as you keep at least $50,000 in it, we'll give you 4% interest compounded monthly.
And that 4% interest, does that mean you can take out 50,000 plus 4%, or do you want to take the 4% of 50,000 out of it?
Depends on the conditions. Under what I just said, you would get the 4% interest as long as you kept an average daily balance of at least $50,000. I had one of those money market ones. I briefly had that much cash in hand right after I sold a condominium.
Like,
And I bought a new condominium, and I haven't had anywhere near that much money since.
so the bank has you making more money than you off of it, right?
Not off of the transaction with you, but off their total transactions.
Right.
The bank now what the bank will then do is the bank will give loans to other people. Okay, and the loans are always at a higher interest than whatever they're giving on savings accounts. So if you are getting 4% interest on a money market, then the bank is loaning money to someone else at higher than 4%. And again, if they want, now what works in your favor when you're saving often works against you when you're asking for a loan. If you have excellent credit and you're looking for a small loan, they may only charge you simple interest on the loan. If you have poor credit or you want a larger loan, they may charge you compound interest on the loan, and I believe they most often do. Mortgages are totally weird. This is not even complicated enough to describe mortgages. They're in a whole other category. And and if you don't think that some high school dropouts can do math, if you go to a loan shark on the street, I guarantee you they're doing compound interest probably daily. They're probably not using E. But yeah, if you've got very poor credit, they're going to put terms on the loan where you're going to have a lot of interest. If you can get the loan at all. But these things tend to go in cycles. Anyway, that's a little more than we need to manipulate this. Oh, the short version for compound interest. You got PERT for the nice short version here. For compound interest, you just have A equals the principal times 1 plus the rate as a decimal divided by n, the number of times it's being compounded in a year, raised to the nt. Cody, the other day you were saying that you remembered another representation of E. If you plug in $1 for $1 on the principal, 1 for the interest rate, 100%, like we did, and infinity basically for n because you're doing it constantly. That's one of the ways to prove
It was like
E
1
exists.
over 1